Hello everyone, this is Ritu Jyoti. I'm the General Manager and Group VP of AI Automation, Data and Analytics at IDC. I'm super excited to present to you this very engaging and intriguing topic today. As Gen AI continues to mature, the use of AI in driving business innovation and growth will only become more pronounced and strategic. And organizations that can effectively scale AI initiatives and integrate them into their core operations will be the ones to lead in this new frontier, reaping the benefits of increased efficiency, deeper insights, and enhanced decision making. We believe that the year 2024 marks a significant leap towards a bright future where AI is seamlessly woven into the fabric of business, driving productivity and innovation. So, let me first start with where we are with generative AI, a quick rundown of the state of the union. So, today we can safely say that generative AI is poised to be one of the greatest disruptors to impact businesses and society. In fact, as per our research, worldwide across industries, about 37.4% of the respondents have reported that Gen AI will disrupt their competitive position. So it begs the question, what exactly is happening and why is this happening? And who could have answered it better than Larry Summers, economist and former United States Secretary of the Treasury? He says that AI is coming for the cognitive class, and there's a substantial chance that AI will be a threat to IQ versus EQ. And I love this because what he's trying to say here is that this is going after the knowledge worker. And if something is going to impact each and every knowledge worker, that means every organization is going to be impacted. We at IDC, we have been doing a tremendous amount of research on Gen AI for the last 12 to 16 months. And in the early days of Gen AI, when we asked organizations that what is their current state of evaluating or using Gen AI, most of the organizations said that, they were kind of doing some initial exploration, doing some pilots. What is very interesting to see is that earlier this year, when we ran a similar survey, about 10% of the respondents said that they're doing nothing, which has shrunk quite a bit from our past insights. But what stood out for me is that there's about a significant percent, 18% of them, who are saying at a worldwide level that they already introduced several GenAI enhanced applications and services into production, and they are focused on expansion. And that's the meat of this conversation today, that people have to learn how to scale Gen AI. They have to move beyond the early in exploration and experiments. And for that, we see that production deployments and focus on expansion is rapidly growing across the industries, across the different size of the companies. And in fact, if you take a look into where are the large enterprises in it, they are much further ahead in production deployments than the small and medium sized companies. And if you take a similar lens for the state of the union for different industries, finance and retail, they are the furthest ahead in production deployments of Gen AI. With IDC, as per our AI spending guide, the one that we published in February 2024 and the version one of it, we are predicting that the worldwide AI's IT spend will exceed 512 billion by 2027, and the CAGR is almost 31%. But what is interesting to see is that Gen AI, which has come into existence, even though the technology existed since 2017, has a massive, massive CAGR of almost 86%, and it becomes a sizable chunk by 2027. And we all know that AI has been, used across industries, across various use cases. But when you take a look down into the Gen AI market, it is very intriguing to say that in the early part of the adoption cycle, majority of the spend is happening towards the infrastructure. But by 2027, the split, the size of the bars or the columns, if I may say, for the models and applications, they become equally sizable. And of course, services are playing a very, very critical role, but the split becomes much more distributed. We are predicting that Gen AI will be almost 151 billion by 2027. But I do want to stress on one important fact is that this is not double counting of AI. If general traditional AI is being kind of merged with Gen AI, and in that case, where there's no extra charge for Gen AI, or even when the traditional AI is the leading force, it's counted in the overall AI. And there's some other nuances, but from the infrastructure perspective here, we only count the server, the storage, and the networking that has been included. But the core, the accelerators, just standalone accelerators, because they could be used across various workloads, is not kind of included in it until and unless it is used and dedicated for AI opportunities. So building on this, I think I always get this question, what are the areas where Gen AI will have the most impact? And there's no surprise. In the early days, we were all talking about HR and marketing and sales, but now the conversation has really gone into accelerated innovation, improvement in, product development and design. But today I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about how supply chain is going to be really impacted. And one interesting use case in the case of supply chain that comes to mind is that this is not going to be standalone just Gen AI. And that is the underlying theme that I'm going to focus on today, that people are going to actually look into combining Gen AI with traditional AI. For example, if you're trying to build resilient supply chains, you will be using Gen AI to gather external intelligence, get insights from that. Then you can do the prediction of the future demand by using classical AI, which, traditional predictive AI is very, very popular for that. And then you could make use of Gen AI to determine the procurement plan. So it's the combination and end-to-end scenarios that will actually shape up in transforming the business outcomes. So let's hold off that thought for a little bit later in the presentation, but I'll connect the dots at that particular point in time. Building onto the same thing, while it's all exciting, there's a lot of interest, and we are very happy to see as to how the Gen AI adoption is shaping up. But there's some significant barriers to using generative AI in any organization, and there's some nuances and differences across region. But overall, there are security concerns, the privacy concerns. The technology is nascent, hallucinations continue to be a problem, but there are so many other techniques that are going to be used, including, groundedness by using rack techniques, or by a combination of using the right set of models, and the grounding techniques to kind of contextualize it better. And there are also tools and technologies that organizations are going to make use of to kind of proactively address these situations. But people also are concerned about the quality of data. They don't have the right set of partners to kind of work together. And skills continue to be a challenge. So now that I've given a sense of where we are in the market adoption, what exactly is the state of the union, the overarching thing that we really need to focus on as a company or any organization in the industry is that we need to learn how to scale AI for value. It's not about just dumping money for the sake of it, but how do you kind of, take it to the level where you can, get into some decent amount of business value. So, in our research, we have seen that many companies, when they are kind of into their early forays into Gen AI, it typically involves experimenting with use cases that drive productivity and efficiency, which is a natural choice as a low risk play to gain confidence. But this type of use cases companies are using to, just things that they have been using, doing it with some legacy techniques, and they want to do it faster. But however, if you go a little bit deeper into it, then focus on functional use cases, industry use cases are equally, important, and folks are looking into it. But we've also put together a Gen AI functional use case taxonomy, and I'm giving you a sneak peek here. It's different business functions, whether it is software development, whether it is legal, whether it is R&D. And I'm sure all of us know about customers contact center, how this was being completely transformed during, COVID. And but now, with the combination of Gen AI and traditional AI, we're seeing in conversational AI, we're seeing enhancements to it. But the real time, value that people are kind of focused on are the important business outcomes is the today the operational efficiency, the cost savings, and there's some differences here, but faster innovation, driving value. This is basically the is at the heart of it. And when you ask organizations what has provided them the greatest return of investment, everyone is focused on automating IT tasks because that is the fundamental. If you're able to get the foundations right, you can really scale. So, scale is the underlying theme, and how can they do it end to end for value will all depend on if you have the foundation. And you can start seeing the next important, one area that the people are looking to have the greatest ROI or have seen a greatest ROI is automating business processes and workflows. So I'm sure we all are kind of hearing about that, how you can actually not work in silos but work in end to end, interconnected set of use cases. And that's what I'm going to zero on in a couple of minutes. So it's a no-brainer, right? Generative AI top business benefits, expanding labor productivity was a number one, focus, and that's why you see most of the organizations are focused on the productivity use cases, and then they're, focused on kind of getting into the functional in the industry. But if you see that, where is the overarching or the differentiation or the defensible moats that organizations can build upon, it's not just getting labor productivity because it's going to become table stake. So organizations have to focus on innovation and growth. And how can they make that happen is that they're mostly, stuck in some transitional phase with, and if they're not able to reap the real differentiated business benefit, their enthusiasm is going to fizzle out. So to begin truly scaling AI, they need to focus on, delivering some fundamental shifts in how and what they do it. So let's delve further on it. So if you go into the bigger picture, what an organization is trying to do. So if you start with that, with the business outcomes, then you can actually identify the interconnected use cases. So for example, when I was talking about if you want to build a resilient supply chain, there are some interconnected, something to kind of gather insights, something to gather, do the procurement planning, something to do your, summarization use case. And so all of that has to come together to require a clear vision aligned with the business goals that the leadership has to support, and to develop whole chains of those use cases. So let's continue and see some couple more deeper dive. So, for example, customer contact center, we have been talking about that contact center is really been transforming since we saw the COVID period and the advancements in the conversational AI technology. But when you combine this with generative AI, you could use Gen AI to describe and create workflows. You could use, the software development capabilities to, generate the language for the specific topics. You could generate a code for being used in conversational AI solutions, or you could use Gen AI to draft contextual answers to queries in chats and emails. So, with all of this combination, if you think about, there is a human agent kind of adhering or delivering to the requirements of the customer service in conjunction with the virtual agents. It's the end to end customer experience that is being transformed. So, the overarching business objective here is to transform customer experience, which will lead to higher business growth, better customer satisfaction, and then it will lead to, your top line growth. So essentially, I'm kind of keep on reiterating that don't think in isolation one particular use case. Don't think that it's just about improving the productivity of the human agent, but it's the end-to-end experience that is actually going to be transformed, and the interconnected set of use cases. Suppose, the human agent is trying to get access to certain content. So how could you help the human agent discover that information, that, or, get the right set of context, what the customer is asking about. All of that needs to be interconnected to really, really transform the experience. Building onto this, if you go into the machine learning life cycle for a second, and again, the end to end is that there is a data scientist or a developer who's trying to kind of integrate the predictive models. And for that process, the whole life cycle, the person is interested in getting the right set of data. So you could use here the, automation of data pipelines. You could use, Gen AI for creating synthetic data. You could also use it for how it can be explaining, create a summary report of explaining all the features. It could be used for code generation. So essentially, what we are trying to say is that think about what the overall, if there's faster innovation is the business outcome that organizations are trying to do. And for that, where you're using Gen AI and AI technologies and the whole life cycle experience has to be transformed. So that basically sets the foundation that how you could actually take it to the next level. Similarly, if you go into the third area that, which is very popular, we all have seen in the computer vision side, how you could actually get this into, transformative experience. So let's think about this for a minute. And, computer vision is nothing new. We've been using it for some time. But let's think about how do you kind of, use it for amplifying the value proposition. So think about a retail store. There are thousands of cameras there. The cameras that equipped with computer vision technology can get a sense of, take a stock of the shelves. What are the things that are being kind of, depleted? How can you kind of supplant it with, getting the right set of inventory at the right time? But similarly, if you can actually use Gen AI, the data captured by these cameras is then processed by a large language model, which generates detailed inventory reports, provides restocking alerts, and even assists in forecasting future inventory needs. So essentially, the overall business outcome is to have, better inventory management, reduce the cost of inventory. So all this automated inventory management where Gen AI is integrated with computer vision is really transformative. Similarly, if you think about surveillance for a second, the overall business outcome that organizations are focused on is making, improving the security, right? So here you think about their combined capabilities of large language models and computer vision completely revolutionize all the surveillance systems. They can detect an intruder and generate a comprehensive report detailing the incident, accelerating threat response times, and significant enhancement in security. So, long story short, again, that is the combination. Think about the business outcome, think about the interconnected use cases, and make use of all the types of AI to kind of really, really transform the outcome. So now the second point that I'd like to kind of focus here is that, LLMs are becoming a commodity. Many of the organizations I speak to, they initially just start thinking of putting a wrapper around LLMs, and that's not going to be really taking them too far. Early days of machine learning, everyone was focused on model centric AI. They had the model, which, they had the data, the labeled data, and then they finally made use of model and tuned it and did the hyperparameter feature engineering, hyperparameter tuning to kind of adjust the model to get better performance based on the data that have. Think about the LLMs. They have been trained on vast corpus of publicly available data, and now you could actually create your differentiation with the data that you actually have. And so the focus is all about on the data centric AI. Interestingly, if you see where the organizations are and the planned use of data sources in GenAI, it varies significantly by region. There are some organizations they're using internal, especially at the worldwide level, internal proprietary data. I'm sure all our ears are burning by hearing RAG and how you can contextualize, because your proprietary data is actually going to provide the context and the accuracy context for all your responses. But there are some variations in terms of North America versus Western Europe. North America is heavily, heavily focused on using of the customer data. So what we are reading here is that customer data usage is really kind of compounding or adding to the overall customer experience. So contact center, customer experience, they're very, very closely tied. Whereas in the Asia Pac, or if you look into Western Europe, there's a lot more emphasis on using of public open source data or licensed data from third party service providers is coming from, is the highest usage in already using in Asia Pac. So that's very, very interesting approach as to what people are trying to do, and gives you a sense of what the different kinds of use cases organizations are going after. But let's not forget, in all of this process, in order for you to embrace the AI driven paradigm that AI is everywhere, everyone has to make use of AI. There's not a single application or a single, scenario where AI is not being used. organizations need to become responsible at the core. And when we speak to the end users, most of the people are thinking about, oh, I have to focus on getting my AI principles, then I need to have an AI governance committee, which needs to be diverse and inclusive. But the things don't stop there. Every organization needs to have the policies governing internal use and external use and processes to kind of make sure that they're being adhered to. But the most important thing that people have started kind of, focusing on right now is that educate, training and awareness everybody in the organization. It's not just the data science or the data science, the development team who are working with AI techniques, but everyone. It's not just the technical folks, the line of business folks. They all need to be educated and trained and made aware of what the pros and cons are. And it's very, very critical that organizations also operationalize their AI governance, right? Because the market is changing rapidly. Things are no longer a nice to have. So how do you make sure that the changing regulations, the changing standards, your policies, the best practices are kind of intertwined with your tools and techniques that you're using? And it's very, very critical to remember that the governance doesn't just happen at the model layer. Intuitively, everyone thinks that it's only about, whether we are using open source or proprietary, and open source is much more transparent and uncovered. That's not the discussion here. For every part of the stack, whether it's the infrastructure, whether data security and privacy is critical, if at the models layer, you really need to make sure that it is kind of taken care of, shielded from any kind of model, injections or prompt injections. At the application layer, people might be kind of, really be compromised, and the end user layer in terms of certain security. So you need to have the filters and monitoring. It's an ongoing process. It's not a destination, but a journey. But it has to be, you need to learn through your, adoption and kind of iterate it to get it better and better. So it's critical to kind of underline here that every organization, whether you're a technology supplier or a buyer, you need to become responsible at the core. And with that, so I'd like to kind of start closing here that how, I started with that we all have come to this understanding that Gen AI is not a fleeting trend. It is here to stay. We have a lot of, opportunities. Gen AI has been a catalyst for the overall AI growth. And even though it is, expanding at such a rapid CAGR, the real value is not just about using disjointed use cases and kind of focusing on one thing at a time, but also kind of understanding that what you're trying to be, what are your overall bigger picture, how are the different pieces that are going to come together. So in that, I would like to kind of close with five important pieces of insight and advice. So measure, always start with articulate a vision that's tied to your business objectives, right? There is no value in kind of, just putting in the money without really having a measurement, without really understanding why you're trying to do it and what is your objective. I've always chuckled that there are times when people were focused on the data warehousing solutions and they went on spending money without any tangible ROI. So let's not repeat those mistakes. We always need to kind of focus on double down on the objectives and pick two or three, fundamental shifts that are needed to achieve these objectives, and then empower your dedicated teams. But when I'm talking about the teams, I'm not just talking about the internal team, which I'll kind of come to in a minute, but here I'm talking about partnering with the trusted technology solution suppliers and service providers and focus on the signal. What do I mean is like there's so much of noise in the industry, right? That you could do this and you could do that. But it's what we're trying to say. There are so many reasons for failing to scale, right? When you're doing your experiment, the CIOs really need to see that, what worked, what didn't work, make those right decisions, eliminate things that are not performing, and scale up those that are both technically feasible and have a direct correlation with your business and your value proposition. Then the second area that we are talking about is that it makes sure that you have a clear operating business model, right? What are you trying to achieve? Is this differentiated or is it a me too kind of a scenario? And then you have your leadership support and empowers. You have to be very agile culture and experimentation, because you cannot kind of sit here on the sides and think that this is going to kind of just happen. You really have to experiment. The more you be out, the more you test it out, you can learn, but be very agile in kind of making those right decisions. This is not working and we need to kind of get rid of that, but focus on the integration. It's not about the individual pieces. This has been an age old problem in the industry. I've spoken, when we used to kind of talk about the traditional automation, we saw the same scenario. Things worked in isolation, but then the organizations had to spend tons of money and effort stitching things together, and they were like breaking apart. So focus on the integration. The challenge lies in how the different pieces come together. Is you can have the individual LLMs working, APIs work, but they don't integrate with your systems of record, they don't integrate with your systems of experience, they don't integrate with your individual components. So really, really kind of with your right set of data sources, with your right set of applications, that you really need to kind of work through it. Then the third and the most important thing, I kind of alluded a little bit to the different types of data quality. It is one of the big barriers that people don't have the right set of data. But I think it's not about the volume of the data. It's actually about the right data, the high quality data. And then in that case, when you're focused on the right quality data, which provides the right contextual guidance, you really have to think that how can they all orchestrate from an organization's domain and workflow expertise, whether it is the sequencing of the model, the data, the system interactions of an application, whether it is running on cloud, on public cloud, or on your premises. And you all need to be hyper attentive in observing and triaging capabilities to speed and Gen AI with speed and safety. So we have been in the early days seeing the ML ops function kind of evolve. Now we are kind of seeing LLM ops and foundation model ops evolve. Focus on end-to-end orchestration of the main components of the model. Make sure that it's not just working very fine in your training stages, but you can actually deploy it into production. You can observe. Observability plays a very critical role here in terms of your scaling. So observability tools that monitor the GenAI application interactions with users in real time, track the metrics such as response time, accuracy, user satisfaction scores. They will take you a long, long way in scaling AI. I kind of hit on the most important thing, that we have to do it responsibly. And we talked about how do you become responsible at the core. You really need to kind of make sure that every step of the way you're having processes in place for in terms of accountability and structures, but also inhibit. If something goes wrong because we are in the nascent stage of technology, how can you take corrective action right ahead of time and focus on adherence? It's not just to put certain things in production, as I keep on saying, that it might have worked together fine at the early stages, but when you've deployed in production, you have to observe and you need to focus that you're avoiding or inhibiting nefarious scenarios, because there might be a context drift or a data drift that you might have been confronted with. And then lastly, before I go there, I do want to kind of stress on another thing is like, make sure that you have a composable architecture. And I said you focus on the integration and the orchestration, but to get your companies to scale, it's important that you don't use multitude of tools and technologies and make a complete chaos there, right? Don't proliferate tools and technology. Use the right set of tools and technologies that integrate and work end to end. Then, lastly, I'd like to say engage in proactive change management. We have consistently seen that there's lack of skills, and I showed you as well that there are teams available, but do they have the right skill set? Can they actually kind of work together? And it's not just having the technical skills. We really need to focus on teams that can understand the impact of AI, they can understand the technology, and we also have people who have domain expertise. So of course, we need to engage in proactive change management, upskilling, impact on how they are going to be impacted, redeployment of their jobs, but have a cohesive team that can, understand the overall big picture for your company, that can work together from a technology, the business, and AI perspective, and then they can build value and deliver value. As I shared in one of my slides from the early insights that we have been kind of engaging into, on an average, some of the organizations have reported that they, for every dollar they're spending, they're kind of having 3.5x ROI. And there are very few organizations which who are actually even getting 8 to 10x. So your goal really is to unlock your own defensible modes, focus on, building things that either give you a differentiated experience. Differentiated experiences is always a sticky point in the eyes of the customer in kind of driving significant value. The second is that, just don't be stuck with just the productivity and operational efficiency. I showed that most of the organizations are focused on that, but think beyond productivity and efficiency, how you could actually scale to, a place where it really makes you kind of, figure out what exactly is your core differentiation. How you could be, GenAI is not just on the top of the corporate agenda uh, for just being there, but it is there for a good reason. And companies, you cannot afford to ignore the other AI programs that you have been developing. So the key to building valuable, sustainable AI solution is how companies they can bring classical and generative AI together to work in cohesion, in unison, to transform your business processes across your value chain. With that, it is a pleasure to talk to you all today, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.